line. I made you freak. So while I'm doing my scouting routine, looking for fobs within 12 jumps of my staging area, I thought I'd try to work on this summary of that podcast I tried to pick apart a few days ago, and that I promised I'd get out a summary ASAP. I've been distracted by real life and other games and YouTube, and I just don't want to do it. It's kind of painful, but I'm going to force myself to go through it. I think I can find the relevant portions quickly enough, and it might take a little bit, but I think I can do it quickly. So let's start off. Now, here's the thing. We all know that CCP promises things, and then, I used to think Indian giver was when the white folk would fork tongue, lie to, and give written promises to the Indians, and would renege on those. But apparently, it's not that at all. So, it's kind of hard to weed out racism in an old person like me when we just learned stuff from school that was just flat out racist. But at least I can be aware of and try not to use terms I really should know better, but I don't. Unfortunately, that's the whole. They did bring up NFTs in the podcast in an offhand way, and CCP spokespeople, the two of them, geez, they're Tweedledum and Tweedledummer. Okay, so he said, and I paraphrase here because I'm not going to quote exactly. He said, if you don't understand it at all, you're not going to get it. You're going to think it's a scam. But if you understand what NFTs are really about, you'll know they're a great opportunity to blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, the hell is he talking about? It's like, I think I know NFTs as you own a position in a queue that is represented by an image that people say you own, but the only thing you own is the position in the queue, and the only thing blockchain verifies is that position in the queue is unique. That's it. And you don't want to hear my position on blockchain and cryptocurrencies because, yeah. Okay, so, that, I just wanted to get rid of that because I'm sure people who, hopefully you're not, but if you pay any brief attention to the forums or Reddit or anything, they're yelling and screaming about NFTs like it's pay to win. Yes, there are dog whistles about NFTs used like a buzzword, and dog whistled for pay to win, pay to earn. They're using the term. It's kind of gross that people are trying to, and the metaverse and all that stuff, and you're like, do you people, like, it's like, inconceivable. Princess Bride, it's like, do you even, I don't think you know what the word you're referring to means what you think it means, and it's all madness. So, and it's ironic that CCP gave out free NFTs a month before the Icelandic government shut down any new Bitcoin miners going to Iceland, because if you think about it, they've got hydro, they've got thermal, they've got wind power, they've got all this excess energy, and they've even got these aluminum industries, which are the most massive energy hogs on the planet for industry. you know, they've been they had set up shop decades ago, right? So in comes bit miners using the excess power, and they can actually use quite a bit of power. So Iceland said no more Bitcoiners. A month after CCP gave away free NFTs, the irony is so delicious. And you know they're a bunch of nerds that sit around in the pubs and they talk to each other, I'm sure. You know? Yeah, just amazing stuff. Just as a CCP is well aware of the environmentally friendly talking points of some of these yahoos. It's like, if you're talking about just normal Bitcoin stuff, and they're saying they're coming up with a new Bitcoin. Yeah, sure, it'll use less energy because it hasn't gone to the crazy levels of math that Bitcoin currently is at. You know, to all that computing power, using all that power, of course any other Bitcoin solution is going to be more environmentally friendly. it's mentally deranged. And there are some technologies that use less secure means of verifying things. Like, they've got proof of, humor me, they've got proof of work, and that's Bitcoin, and then others do proof of stake, and others even do proof of space, which is just hard drive thing. And proof of stake is just, well, the biggest commercial owners of the coin do the crunching, and or something, or I'm probably misunderstanding it, but you get what I'm trying to get at. The gist of it is just, really?
Warp drive active.
Sure. You know, snake oil salesman. So, it's funny that CCP is so conscious about wording it even before Iceland cracked down, and I'm sure they're even more conscious now. You know, it's a big scam, and it's all the rage now because it's buzzwords, and it's a way to probably skirt around the gaming for money tactic that war gambling is infamous for, right? So war gambling is infamous. We all know that. And yeah, other people want to get on the bandwagon. So yeah, that's that in a nutshell. So let's bury that and move along. So I have a spot in the podcast that has CCP Ratatti, who was in charge of Dust way back when, and is now in charge of basically marketing, basically trying to get all the different departments to talk together. That's his official hat. And he came up with a whiz-bang idea of going with quadrants back when they shelved they removed it from the website, the EVE Online /updates. You could scroll through their updates, past and present, and a little bit into the future. And they axed that right around the time they came up with quadrants. And I think they're getting tired of it because the quadrants, as you and I know since November 17th or so, is a big effing lie, because all they've ever done is go with the next patch is awesome. That's all they've ever done until the quadrants was the next patch is going to be awesome. And it's like, we're like, yeah, but there's other things. There's, oh no, that's the last patch. We're done with that with fix. We're moving on. It's great. It's going to improve everything. It's like, okay then.
Warp drive.
And these quadrants are such a bullshit line that not even the originator of the quadrants can keep his story straight. Now, this is a huge lead up to this podcast clip. I'm going to play. I'm just going to get rid of it completely, just to clear the air. And I don't need to talk about it anymore because it is bile-inducing anyway. So, if this master of the 2-year plan, or at least 2-year plan, let's call it a 3-year plan, this master of the 3-year plan, or should I even dare say 5-year plan? Lol. It's another CCP reference, then a little bit. It is hilarious. Okay, so CCP's 3-year plan for the ecology, with 3 phases and multiple steps in each, is pure BS because it's, and here I'm going to prove it to you. So here's 2 things. Well, when you're listening to this little clip of CCP Ratatti, have in your mind the concept of long-term, years long-term, phases and steps to your plan, and think roadmap, think long-term plans, think agendas, think, just a concept of long-term. Now listen to him speak about the feedback they wanted for their November 17th or 18th or whatever, close enough, patch. An article that said, hey, go on to Singularity and help us test this stuff. And listen to him speak and just try to glean anything that sounds, we had a plan, we have to adjust it now, the long-term plan has to be lengthened. Try to listen for any topic about what we're doing to adjust these things you're getting feedback on, how it impacts the longer-term vision for the economic ecology that we've got in these 3 phases, and has a long-term, multi-year plan that we're, the implication is we knew where we were going, we had a plan, we couldn't show you guys, but we were just waiting to introduce it. So, a lack of placeholders by the graphics department for the major things in there, the errors that were just blatant, the missing code that just basically not working anything, and the confusion around ship rolls and ship bonuses, and the fact that we couldn't literally get a good grasp of what was happening to the Rorqual and the Orca because the ship bonuses just weren't catching on Singularity at the time. I can tell you now that the tests I've done now is that there was no change to the Rorqual's bonuses of ship or roll or anything. The only nerf it ever had was the waste of the drones, now called residue. Now just think about that as you're listening to this guy speak, and try to find any long-term, non-waffling statement out of this guy when he speaks, and it's just absolutely impossible.
And we took heed, and it was a complex release for us, multiple components coming together, and I'll just admit it, the kind of final oversight of the package wasn't kind of clear. It kind of was a bit of a mixed bag, and some of the numbers that we're seeing were basically blown out of proportion to be able to see some of these effects on CC, just so that we'd know what they were placeholders on CC. So and then there were errors and all that stuff. So we took all that into account, and then we took the good critique feedback and went back into dev, and and we launched what we thought was the right thing to launch, and we talked about it on streams and forums, and we're now working on further iterations and improvements and new features.
So we recently had
So did any of that, any sentence, any word, anything of that, even imply, tacitly or otherwise, anything but the next patch? And so this guy, it has been selling us a bunch of bunk for years, and he's been milking it for years. And it's like, okay, well, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't add up. The only thing that adds up, honestly, is FanFest. It must be. I mean, the guy is so done with. What he probably did was go to the dev team and said, "I'm bored. We milked this ecology, economy phases too long. What can you do to speed it up?" And they probably said, "Well, this phase we're on, it's we're ending. We're ending scarcity, right? I mean, that's the whole we're about to, right? We've got a couple more things we're about to." But I think the way they spoke to him about it and how tone deaf he is, well, tone deaf CCP is basically, is that he probably got the notion that it wasn't, the eve of prosperity. He thought dawn of prosperity, because he heard end as in, oh, you're ending it, so it's the beginning of something, because he wants to move on so badly to something else, which I think is, it wouldn't be sexy to talk at FanFest about this boring 3-year thing they've been going on. He wants something, to really sell FanFest, and I'm sure they're already on that. And I'm sure it involves something that deals with the economy, but they want to move on. So, yeah, I think it's just he wants to move on. He wants to move on to the next phase. Come on, let's go. Let's step this up. And I think in the rush to, because I think this guy is actually driving the dev team, not the other way around, horse before the cart. So I think they just took whatever they had at hand and released it onto Singularity. And it was broken as hell. It was missing so much stuff that even the playtesters, like I tried to make sense of it, but I couldn't, because there was just so much. We were handicapped at the start, and it wasn't fair to ask us to give feedback, because all that we were doing, and you heard him say the words, they were basically, it was broken, and he went back to the dev team, and they're making fixes. And the thing is that his new stuff, well, it's you can't believe CCP. They have deliberately used misleading and misrepresentation in the past, because they know that they're not going to get sued by us for it, and that they know we can't sue them.
Warp drive active.
And it's pretty slimy, but hey, it's not as bad as Cyberpunk 2077, right? The way they hyped that up. So, that was the gist of it. Basically, well, you had CCP Swift, who was, a freaking Elise Randolph, for Christ's sake, Mr. ePeen himself, and with his anecdotes and BS,
Warp drive active.
and I'm sure those he loves going onto Reddit. I have never registered an account on Reddit. I think it's accessible, but yeah, he loves confrontation, and it's mostly him just BSing. I mean, sure, he'll use a bit of truth, but most of it's crap. So yeah, I think the whole thing was an embarrassment. The one takeaway from it I had was a real takeaway was their really sketchy description of the third phase of this economy ecology. It was something about industry hubs, but the way they said it was kind of weird. He wasn't using the term in a consistent way. On one hand, it was it was one of the keystones in the end of the third phase, and they swore up and down this year is the end of the ecology phases. It'll be the last step. Will be ending this year, assuming at the end of this year. So I said 3-year plan. So swore up and down that, and they in the same breath, well, the next breath actually, he talked about how
Warp drive active.
infrastructure, and the Ihub would be the keystone for the new thing. And I'm like, oh, that's definitely going to be FanFest, right? But I'm thinking, he didn't really. It wasn't. It was almost as if he was saying too much and using a term as a buzzword, basically, to attach any concept he wanted to pleat it as. And he knows that CCP has a habit of disowning what people promise. They say, oh yeah, we don't like making promises. And he's literally saying, oh yeah, we don't want to make any promises, but he's literally teasing us with stuff that are promises, basically, because when you tease somebody, it's like a promise, like this is in the pipeline at some point, but it's probably patently not. So I must warn you that I'm very hesitant in endorsing by saying, hey, this is what they talked about that I think is in the third phase, the Ihub, because I think he's just bullshitting. And I'll find it for you. Let's see. Alright, so
We love to do that too. We have really creative teams to do it, but we don't have the tech.
We're going to change.
Baseline. And now we're in the
players to actually buy your shit. Nothing CCP is going to.
and now we're in the iteration phase. The iteration phase is a few things.
Milking hard.
Actually, it's the compression. Compression is going to change dramatically how things travel to the universe, and it's going to change dramatically how people are able to source their manufacturing. So we can't really say what the.
Sorry, wrong spot. He's basically saying nothing. You glean nothing out of what you already know about compression as it was presented on Singularity by what he's saying. There is nothing of what he's saying. The only concrete thing he says is there's going to be more options than right click. It's like, you damn well better be, So he says nothing. Just basically going to fix the errors. Thanks so much for the bug testing, and here you go. Blech.
warp drive active.
All right. Now then. Close that out. Now where is it? Let me try
Current
to find it. You know what?
are any like really will act as
What the other? It's like it's just teasing and bullshit. And it's like
might be a. There's just a handful of ways we could do it, but we're definitely taking a look at it.
mainstream make it as
Something that happens in the real world, and you have to deal with it. But one of the main bottlenecks we're going to fix is definitely PI volume.
and it's like
Quality of life to me is more like
but we want to develop the time owners. Yeah, they just don't get it.
kind of the wealth of options that where we can actually intervene. Remember correctly, of just releasing some of the standings requirement for wormhole. A couple of fun.
All through this interview there, they've been dropping what amounts to promises, like, oh, we're just totally going to improve that, or we're totally going to improve this, and you're like, and you can't talk about a roadmap, and then you're dropping this shit. It's like, give me a break. You don't have a coherent vision other than next patch, you know? It's quite interesting. And I will show you something that's interesting just before CCP tries to answer this question.
Do you think it's realistic that that would get significantly addressed this year?
Yeah. Yes.
And as far as everything else, do you think it's realistic players would get an idea of what is prioritized on the roadmap this year?
So, remember, the host of this is asking about roadmaps and plans and long-term, and the guys are just not cluing in. Like Tweedledee and Tweedledum are just not. It's like, next patch, we like the feedback on our package, blah, blah, blah. And you just don't get. It's like they're in total cognitive dissonance about, oh, yeah, we have this great 3-year plan, but we're going to talk in language of the next patch. And you're like, yeah, but that's CCP of old. So basically what you're saying is, even you can't get your story straight about this 3-year plan, where to you, when you go back to your dev team, it's all about the next patch, and it always has been, and it's only you who have been selling this, so it's like crazed. But he's been around since Dutz, so I'm sure he's got his lips firmly sealed on the rectum of CCP Elmar, so we know how secure his job is. Probably very. Alright, Eli. Ooh, hey, what's this? A wee bit out of my way, but wow, really. It definitely left fallow over there, that's for sure. Okay, so sorry. Get back on.
Autopilot engaged.
Why the heck am I so far behind on that guy?
Stargate.
Give me a sec. So what I'm looking for is the Ihub talk. Okay. So this is the sort of roadmap we're looking for. This was back in 2014. And that was CCP Siegel talking about New World, and it's interesting the very slimy way she talked about it, because she used words in a sequence that made you think this new world was a new area of space. And I believe it was deliberate, the script that she was reading, to give you a thought of something bigger, that they basically promised you something.
Approaching Stargate.
They were selling you a big freaking lie to make it more exciting. I think to generate hype, they'll literally lie to us and manipulate us into thinking something that's not there. But they will be so slimy about it that they want to do it underhanded. You know, they won't say, oh, it's going to be a new area of space. No, they'll use synonyms for that, and they'll sell it hard, and it'll get you hyped, thinking, oh wow, Stargate to new area of space, back to Earth, what's going on? And you just read into it because you want to, because they're trying to generate hype, and it's unfair because it was exciting regardless, but they just want to sex it up, and that's CCP in a nutshell. So let's try to find the roadmap.
Scale construction project. It's of the vicious cycle.
Yeah, she was like, and after this, we'll deal with sovereignty. And of course, we all know we got Fozzie Sov.
Harvesting, build.
And they're,
we are
talking about this. We're not talking about a new space.
A lot of things that we are looking at in the near to midterm, at least in this podcast.
Next batch.
I don't know that I missed anything. Let me check if I...
Yeah, let me check my bullshit file. Yeah, it's all they care about is the promising new patch they're working on. And they don't care about the past, they don't care about the future. And if we're stupid enough to believe they're marketing bullshit about phases and steps and ecology, and they're really concerned about, long-term blah, 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 it's like...
on my wish list.
Off the top
rather
of my
than
head,
focus on sorry, Artemis.
Off the top of my head, a phrase that is thrown around quite frequently when discussing the industry changes was sort of looking forward to dynamic distribution. Could you give like a more nuanced view of what that means as of right now? Are we in a state of dynamic distribution, or further changes coming? How does that feel and work?
Dynamic distributions is, we're not there yet. We're in the between. Dynamic distribution is supposed to happen very closely related to Ihub upgrades.
Now, pay attention to that sentence. He's linking dynamic distribution to closely with Ihubs, and within minutes they will reverse that and talk about it being a new thing. You're like, wait, dynamic. So what I'll do is I'll start at when the host asks that question. I'll just play it all the way through, so you can hear the multiple ways he uses Ihub to sell the end of one thing and the beginning of another, and you're like, what? So definitely don't know what he's talking about. It could be what they're going to be talking about at FanFest. It definitely sounds like a talking point.
Warp drive active.
Because these two are all about freaking talking points. So I'll play it for you, and I'll let you decide for yourself, because it's the one bit of the clip where I can guarantee you this is the kind of tease bullshit that
Approaching Stargate.
they're infamous for.
To many or few players, and is it justifiable to keep having it at that power level? Or we did a lot of things, surgical strike that affected them.
Wait, where was it? Crap.
Adversely easier than it used to be, and
Distribution. Could you give like a more nuanced view of what that means as of right now? Are we in a state of dynamic distribution, or further changes coming? How does that feel and work?
Dynamic distributions is, we're not there yet. We're in the between. Dynamic distribution is supposed to happen very closely related to Ihub upgrades that we have on the roadmap. So with Ihubs, we've always wanted to increase the customization and kind of leverage the fact that we have we made geography matter. So bringing back some of these minerals into nullsec that we removed by choice and cost would be a very interesting choice for alliances and corporations in null. So that's kind of part of the Ihub package, if you will. And a part of that is improved UI and UX on that. So additional resources, different combat sites, maybe even these harder combat sites that I mentioned before. So that's all kind of in that nebulous package of distribution, as well as taking into account player action. So we want to keep working on the game fundamentals where your actions actually mean something. And this is something that we've been talking about for 2-3 years now, is that if you we want the universe to react. So you can deplete something or make it more scarce in your area by over harvesting it or overusing it. The first foray was a DPS, and something similar is, or maybe not similar, but like in that vein, is dynamic distribution. So your actions would matter more.
So I want to move into our last question, and I just want to throw this out there, not necessarily for you to respond, Ratatti, just to take it in as a point of feedback. You have given us like a lot of things that CCP is working on and looking at, but I think everybody here knows, and certainly the audience should understand, that not all of those things are necessarily equal. There's prioritization. CCP only has so many resources. What gets worked on first is a really big decision for any company. And some changes that might be bigger, might take a long time, but are still worth doing ahead of other things that might be faster, that are still important, but we just can't, we got to do this other thing over here. I'm not saying instead of roadmaps or specific lists of things that you're working on, which CCP has put out on a dev blog to their credit fairly recently, I think. But some idea of, or not, some confirmation to the players that like CCP has thought about priority and an understanding of what do you see as the big problems, not what you're going to do to fix them, but what areas are you looking at more closely, and getting CSM and player feedback on the priority list as opposed to specific changes, I think might be an interesting iteration on development communication with the player base.
Yeah, that's a good point. I can share that, for example, Ihubs that we wanted to kind of keep working on and use as a kind of baseline into our next large initiative, because kind of fix the economy initiative is kind of at the end of its run. I've talked about wanting to start to do something way more constructive and more fun and more creative this year, and kind of start that, and which means that we are, for example, deprioritizing the Ihub over structure rework. So we're raising the structures to a higher level of importance at the moment. So,
and that is that. Thank you for listening. There's nothing else of value in that podcast, and other than picking apart Kellyanne Conway's, CCP Swift's basic
docking permission requested.
talking strategy. It's just, wait for somebody to say a word you can just twist and talk about, and there's not even a tangential relation to what the point of the host was talking about. And it's probably why he relishes going onto Reddit. It's like, wow, this is you're just like them, just trolling basically. So yeah, there you go. There's something big in the works, and he's basically bored of this whole thing because he knows it's the point where there is no vision. There was no vision. There was no long-term plan. The host did mention that they had posted about plans and their vision for the phases, and that wasn't a dev blog. It was an actual thing. CCP dev blog, ecology, economy, blah blah blah, something like that. I won't find it. Dev blogs, maybe I think. Let's see, 2020. I don't think so. It's got... Okay, this could be it. I think did I hit? Yeah, okay. So this is what he talked about. A roadmap for... yeah, this thing. It's kind of hard to read, but yeah, I mean, this is what they wanted. They wanted, yeah, this is what they wanted this stuff to be, and they gave themselves grades on what was going on. And yeah, you could definitely go to and read that and see their long-term focus, but I'm gonna guarantee you that if we open up the hood and look at it, it's gonna be, wait a minute, this isn't as much a plan as your next nerf list, and we all know that's a thing. So now, at the end of the day, I am not saying the Rorqual nerf was bad, and I'm not saying the high sec Moonor, the ABCs in the Moonor, was a nerfing that was a bad thing. I was horrified they were both a thing when I came back to the game. I was like, what the hell? How is they are command industrial ships? The command, that's not elite, it's burst, it's bonuses, it's buffing. What are they doing mining alone, you know? So in that vein, I'm for all these nerfs, really. I'm not against it. I'm just horrified at the way I was deluded by these quadrants, as they had to, like, you think about it, they're quadrants. They announced the quadrant and you were like, oh, cool. And then you thought, well, wait a minute, beyond announcing it and having something similar in the next patch that you had, it didn't follow in the patches you introduced. This phase, this quadrant thing you had going. So it's just, you know, should have been red flags, but yeah. But if anybody believes, after listening to all this, that CCP has a plan and that they have their quadrants that mean something other than a marketing gimmick, you, my friend, are brainwashed, and there's nothing I can do to help you. But anyways, there you go. That hopefully is very short. I think it covered everything. Anyways, have a good day, and yeah, I'll go off fob hunting now.